Okay, now let's take a look at topographic map and typical terrain. I mean, what are typical features, terrain features, and how to read this on a topographic map. Yeah, I started it. It's running, yeah. Okay, so if you look at, I mean, a mountain range, right? So most of the time, we know like a mountain range is a three-dimensional kind of thing. Uh, when Whenever you're at a certain position, obviously you're only gonna see, like, for example, here you're gonna see like a cut, a two-dimensional cut of this mountain range, and you're gonna basically see like what we call a ridge line here, a ridge line which connects. You will have peaks, which are like the highest points, and you'll in between the peaks you'll have saddles, where you basically, I mean, have like a lowest point between two continuous peaks. You'll have valleys that will be visible. So this, of course, will change drastically as you walk around the hill. You will suddenly see peaks coming, appearing, disappearing. The shape will be totally different. So always be careful. I mean, when you look at one side from a hill, that's actually why these topographic maps will mostly look from the top, so you have a clear overall view. Okay, so let's take a look. What are the, I mean, like I would say, four major characteristics, entities within a mountain. Obviously, one is the peaks or the hills. So these things can be easily recognized on a topographic map, a contour map, by these concentric lines, right? So, for example, this might be, the outer line might be 100 meters, this might be 120, 140, 160. So this could be a peak, which is around, say, 160, 170 meter altitude, right? So here on top of the peak, no matter which direction you go, north, east, west, or south, you're gonna start cutting contour lines. So you're basically gonna start descending. So concentric circles, basically, you will see in the topographic maps, concentric circles here at different places. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. It can be an elliptical thing. Corresponds to peaks within your mountain range. Okay, so this is one thing, the hills. Another thing is the saddle. The saddle is an important thing. We will see later why. So if you have two peaks here, right, so you have two areas where you have a number of concentric circles which go higher and higher till you reach the highest point, the peak of the hill. Yeah.
The circle is like a flat. It's 150 meter at the top of 150 meter. You have this much big circle.
Yeah, no, so be aware that these are just like, they only draw a line, a contour line every 20 meters. So it's not, say, because, I mean, this, you have a big inner circle, or because you have, like, say, 100 meters between a contour line, that it's flat. So it just means that between this line and this line, if you walk from this point to this point, you would have gradually increased 20 meters. Right? I hope you understand. You cannot draw a contour line every single meter, because then it's going to be very congested.
We can say that, okay, that the circle cannot have been more than 20 meters.
Yeah, that you can say that anywhere within the circle, if this is 160 meter, that nowhere it's going to be higher than 180 meter. Because if it's every 20 meter contour line, you're not seeing any dot or smaller circle inside. So that means it is indeed within those 20 meters of that contour line. That's correct. So these are saddles. So what are saddles? Say a saddle look like this. So you got a peak left, you got a peak right. Yeah, and obviously the mountains are not like connecting peaks to peaks on with a flat ridge always. Typically you have ups and downs. So if so this kind of, this might not really be a valley or really a stream, but this can just be a drop between two peaks. This is called the saddle. So this is basically the lowest point looking at a certain range, because as you walk around, that saddle might vary. If you look from a certain point, the lowest point between two peaks is called the saddle, and that you can easily recognize on a topographic map on the left side in this way, right? So if you go from this peak, right, you start going outside the contour line, so you get out, so which means you're basically dropping altitude, say 160, 140. Let me standardize on 20 meter contour line, so 140, 120, right? And here, instead of going out kind of these concentric circles, now you start entering again. So you start entering again towards the concentric circle. So here you are at the lowest point, and here you start going up again. So I hope everyone kind of is following here, right? So from here to here you're going down, from here to here you're climbing up again. Alright, so then we have a valley. So valleys I'm gonna explain extensively in the next 30 minutes. So what is a valley? A valley is basically like a cut in the mountain range, typically right formed by a stream. So water that falls down, rainwater that falls down on a mountain range. Mountains are typically solid rock, so the only way for the water to get out is kind of flow down into the valleys and be drained by the stream. So as this happens over hundreds and maybe millions of years, hundreds of thousands and millions of years, obviously the water starts eroding and you get the formation of valleys. So a valley, if you look at this valley, this picture is not that clear, but a valley typically looks like this on the contour map. So a valley obviously is kind of the lowest point in the mountain range. So if you follow the stream here, if you follow the bottom of the valley, right, the stream, the water runs always at the lowest points. So if you're at any moment in the valley, if you start going left or right of this stream or this valley, you'll immediately see that you start cutting contour lines, right? So from the lowest point, you start climbing up here, and you're again entering these concentric circles, these concentric contour lines. Same happens on the left side. So on the left side of the valley, obviously, there is also kind of an edge. So if I start walking to the left again, I'm climbing up. So as you follow the stream, typically, most streams are very important as they will have a couple of important benefits for treks. So one of the things will be that the stream typically will have a very gradual incline. If you follow a stream, the contour lines that you're still cutting contour lines here, but the distance between the contour lines will be much more. So it will be very gradual. Typically, only at certain places there might be waterfalls or drops into the stream. The easiest way to get in a mountain range typically will be through a stream, through a valley. Then kind of the opposite of a valley will be a ridge. So where a valley is kind of the lowest point, right, where that basically drains the water out of the hills, a ridge is basically your highest point. If you, from a mountain top, you can either get into the valley and exit through the exit actually by following the stream, but you could also keep walking on top of the ridge, which is your highest point here. So from the peak, actually, you could start walking over these topo lines here. You will not go this way because this is more steep. Contour lines are close to each other. You will go typically this way, which will be the most gradual incline, as the topo lines are much more spaced. So this basically will allow you to walk on what we call a ridge. So if you leave the ridge, so either if you go left or right from the ridge, again you start cutting contour lines, just like with the stream. But in this case, you start cutting towards the outer part. So you start leaving the concentric circles, which means that you're starting to climb down. So here you climb down, that side also you will climb down. And if you go forward on the ridge, you will kind of have a more gradual a descent from the mountain, like you can see here. So here we'll have a gradual descent. Left and right, you will typically climb down faster. Okay, so there are a couple of other features in terrains, but I think these are the most important ones. So the peaks, which you can identify using these concentric circles, the saddles, which are lowest points in between the peaks, the valleys, which will be the kind of, on a global level, the the deepest points within the mountain range, and then the ridges, which are the opposites of valleys, which are kind of the the top of the mountain that you're walking on to reach a peak. So let's just take a quick look at this presentation here. So before I now dive into Google Maps and we'll go a little bit more decoding, let's start decoding like a realistic, real-world topographic map. So let me just take a look at a little bit more theory here. I forgot to mention this slide. So here this is taken from the Wikipedia. Here again you can kind of see what is the contour line. So just to explain once more that everyone is clear. So if this is basically a peak here, right, this is the highest point. Here you have like a gradual slope. Here you have a more steep slope. And every step here corresponds again, say, to an increase in altitude of 20 meters, right? So this could be a typical, mountains are never gonna be stepwise, obviously, but on a computer we cannot, make a perfect smooth surface. So we're kind of gonna represent it in 20-meter steps. So if you look at the corresponding contour lines or topographic map of this specific example here, this peak, then you're gonna see this. So I think this will give you a clear visual idea, right? That as you walk from the plains here surrounding the mountain, you start going again through these concentric lines. At the eastern side, the right side of the mountain, you can see that the contour lines are spaced further away, which corresponds to this less gradual steepness. If you come from the left side, the west side, you can see it's much closer to contour lines, right? Because the steps, the 20-meter steps up, is much quicker. So I think this gives you a clear idea again on, how you should interpret those contour lines. Okay, so now let's spend 20 minutes of taking a look at Nagalapurama, a place we frequently visit, and kind of decode the corresponding topographic map.